First reading of the ordinance number 23-2019. This is the City of Greer budget ordinance for fiscal year 2019-20. Mr. Driggers, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, we were able to, contained in your packet is the budget ordinance for 2019-2020. Also included in your package is the comprehensive fee schedule, both of which we are asking that you adopt through the ordinance for first reading this evening. As we would move past first reading, we certainly would have an opportunity to gather any additional information you may have relative to any of the line items that are contained in the supplement that we sent to you, I believe Thursday or Friday, I can't remember the date, but that information was emailed to you, as well as hard copies were provided to you here in your mailbox here at City Hall, and copies of those are provided on your desk here this evening as well. I wanted to spend a couple of moments giving a little bit of a narrative relative to the budget that you have in front of you. Of course, you have the general fund budget, what we call Fund 11, as well as all other fund budgets for us, including our contingency fund, our recreation program fund, capital equipment fund, debt service fund, hospitality taxes fund, stormwater fund, real property fund, sanitation services fund, facilities use fund, and also our road paving fund. All of those budgets provided for you as well. Each of those budgets are for our use for 2019-2020, effective July 1st, 2019, running through June 30th of 2020. In accordance with state statute and with our city ordinances, these budgets are balanced with all corresponding revenues and expenses. These budgets do not require any increase to our millage rate. There are minor adjustments within the comprehensive fee schedule, and we're certainly glad to cover those with you individually as well, as we could take a look at that. We did use our adopted community master plan, our comprehensive plan, and our strategic plan. This, along with your annual planning retreat and workshops that we hold with our staff, these serve as our guide to assist in preparing and recommending the budgets that you have before you. We do continue to use a strategic methodology to analyze our various departments of the city, and we do this on a line-by-line item basis. We attempt to identify those service delivery areas that have been identified by council and communicated to you through your constituents as reported as important to the community. We annually review our core services and the related expenses in preparing those budgets that you have before you. During the prior year budget process, you may recall that we utilized a two-year budget format. Revenues and expenses are consistent with the second year projections that we provided to you 1 year ago. Only minor adjustments were necessary, but for the unanticipated increase in cost to our health insurance program, we were able to present that to you in a different format at your last meeting. And of course, as we would move forward from this point forward, we have resumed the 1 year annual format at the direction of council. This budget has an increase in corresponding revenues and expenses of $2,414,219 over the prior year budget, or the budget that we're currently operating in. This amount reflects an overall increase in our operational expenses of 8.51% compared to the prior year adopted budget. Prior year budget was $25,965,208. The proposed budget is $28,379,427. Millage rate remains at 97.8 mills, of which 14.79 mills are required for the satisfaction of debt service, and 83.01 mills are required for general operations of the city. Estimated value of 1 mill at 100% collection would be $143,006. I do think it's important to note that while the budget reflects an 8.51% increase from the prior year or previous year, please note that we recognize that we have remained extremely conservative in our projections as compared to the estimated current year-end projections. Our actual realized revenue has exceeded our projections in the past fiscal year, and we expect that that will continue in the year of this proposed budget. Therefore, we are projecting income and corresponding expenditures based on expected rather than trend or modified trend analysis. When considering the CPI plus growth standard, which is typically what is referred to us by state statute, CPI plus growth, the overall increase to the prior year is less than 3% increase. And this is funded by increases to our tax base and to new development within our community. One of the concerns that we continue to have relative to our budget is that which is state aid. There have been some significant stabilizations of state aid this past year, but nonetheless, we are continuing to reduce our reliance on state aid or aid to subdivision. We're reducing that by an additional 10% this year, as we have previously been instructed by council to do. We do appropriate those excess revenues to capital, to fund capital and non-recurring expenses. One of the things that we want to make sure that we bring to your attention, that local municipal associations, South Carolina, and also state franchise and business license collections generate $7,924,000 in our upcoming fiscal year. This accounts for 27.92% of our total revenues. It is imperative that we continue to communicate with our legislative delegations relative to the importance of these revenue streams and the impact that there would be upon our citizens if there were changes to the allowance of those revenue streams here at the local level. Relative to our employees, obviously our employees continue to be our most valuable resource, and they are indeed the single most effective tool in managing our cost resources. Our employees continue to step up, and they offer ideas and suggestions on how we can manage our budget and how we can do more with less. They're creative, and they're committed to getting the job done right, and they're committed to doing that in the most effective manner possible. Training and emphasis on quality customer service and ethics has become part of our culture within our organization. Our employees embrace it, they promote it, and I'm very proud of Team Greer and what they've been able to accomplish. We exceed expectations daily. Results of our most recent community surveys continue to indicate support for our employees and the value that they provide to our taxpayers. It's important to note that back in 2014-15, we conducted a comprehensive compensation and classification study. During that study, City Council identified strategies to implement that program and provided recommendations from that study to maintain the integrity of the system. We've been able to do that since the 2015 year moving forward. The plan itself provided parity, equity, allowed us to compare within our upstate region, within municipalities across our state, within comparison groups that we have across South Carolina. Merit is the primary attribute that we look for when we're considering any type of salary increases for our employees, whether that's in a CPI adjustment, a step system. But inside this system, we are providing, inside this recommendation, we are providing for a 2.44% CPI increase, again, that would be distributed only on a merit basis. Due to significant market shifts, low unemployment, and competition, this budget appropriates resources for a new compensation and classification study. I want to make this note that while I believe that there are many shifts in the marketplace relative to compensation and benefits for many of our positions, I am most concerned about those that are reflective of our public safety team members, especially those within our police department. This is due to adjustments made by other area agencies in recent years, and most recently by the Greenville County Sheriff's Department. The comp and class study that's provided for in this budget will identify any disparities which may exist and will identify a plan moving forward to address this issue. Again, I think it's one of our most pressing concerns as we would move forward in a new budget. This budget does allow for us to continue our employee bonus pool program. As you may recall, that is a bonus pool that is based on organizational financial performance and the individual's length of service, and of course merit, always considering merit. We were able to award these bonuses during the past 5 years, and it has had a positive impact to our employees, and it demonstrates our commitment to our employees and provides incentives for them to strive for efficiency and effectiveness. If we're able to award those are typically done during our employee appreciation event each year prior to Christmas. I do believe that by implementing the recommendations of the previous compensation study, that we have been able to very intentionally, very strategically identify increases to our employees' base salaries provided on Consumer Price Index, or CPI. We've been able to do that also through administering steps within grade for those employees. That has continued to be a competitive advantage that we've had here in the marketplace, and we do think that that's the appropriate way for us to continue to move forward. The budget provides for hiring 7.5 new full-time equivalent employees, allows for 1 full-time building inspector, the reclassification from a part-time to full-time permit technician, both of which would be in our Building and Development Standards Department. But it also allows for a full-time grounds maintenance supervisor and the reclassification from part-time to full-time for a recreation assistant, and also the reclassification from part-time to full-time for 1 custodian, the 3 of those positions all being within our recreation department. The budget also provides for 1 public services worker 2 within our public services department, 1 full-time victims advocate, and 1 full-time detention officer within the police department, and also a full-time communications coordinator within the administration department, along with a part-time jury coordinator within the courts department. All of these positions were identified 1 year ago as we were looking at our personnel requirements over the 2-year period. Changes by the South Carolina State Legislature to the state retirement system continues to require that we provide additional resources for funding our state retirement system through our regular retirement system, South Carolina retirement system, as well as the police officers' retirement systems. That is at a 1%, an additional 1% this year, going to 15.56% and 18.24%, respectively, for non-public safety and public safety employees. That will continue to increase by an additional 1% a year through July of 2022, where we will actually go to a peak of 18.56% for the South Carolina retirement system and 21.24% in the police officers' retirement system. Employees are currently at their maximum amounts, 9% for employees in SCRS and 9.75% for those in PORS. So all of our employees are currently at those caps. Again, ours will continue to increase by 1% a year through July of 2022. One of the most significant changes for us this year in our budget is relative to our health insurance costs. Again, we had an opportunity to spend some time at your last meeting talking about the effects of that and what was causing that in our cycle this year. We were able to enjoy 8 years without any increases to funding requirements of premiums from our employees. We've been able to absorb those increases for new employees and any type of administrative costs in those as we've continued to move forward. We do continue to provide our employee coverage at 100% for our team members, and we also do a split of 80-20 for family-dependent coverage, with the city covering 80% of those costs and the employee covering 20%. The increases this year do require that we recommend that we pass along to our employees an increase in that dependent coverage, that we provide 3 levels of coverage. One is employee child, one is employee spouse, and the other is employee family. We are recommending an increase for employee child of an additional $11.07 per pay period, $15.41 for employee spouse, and $19.75 for employee family coverage per pay period. Those dollars are reflected in the budget that we have presented to you. We do remain committed to economic development. We fund 7.125% of our local business license collections to that program, and we do recommend that we continue to do that at that level. Road paving has continued to be successful for us in recent years. We were able to provide some additional funding in the budget this year for road paving as well. We also believe that we will have an opportunity to have additional match funds made available to us on the Greenville County side. So as you work through the budget, you will see that $650,000 appropriated in that area. We believe that with the match program, we could receive as much as an additional $425,000 in match on top of that $650,000. So we're very, very excited about the opportunity to truly exceed the $1 million mark on street paving this year. Again, all of our expenses are reviewed line item by line item. They require departmental justification for each submission that you have before you. We used a process called priority-based budgeting. That was the methodology we used, and we did that in preparing all the expense portions of the budget. I have reviewed all of these with our departments. The budget that we have presented to you, it is the belief of each of those departments that they can operate within the plan of work, that we've continued to communicate with them through your planning processes, that they can do that with the resources that this budget would make available to them. Again, it's important to note that the budget does not require an increase in ad valorem taxes, nor does it require any increase in business license fees. That information is contained within a transmittal letter that I will certainly make available to you this evening. Contained in that information as well is a breakdown of where our revenues come from and how our expenditures are expended. Most significant changes to the budget are identified in an addendum to that communication that I have for you. But I think I can sum that up. Again, the addendum in its entirety is contained in the information that I'll share with you this evening. But as we look at a budget that has an 8.51% increase, $2,514,219. It's very, very quickly you're able to see where that comes from. We have increased costs to our overall personnel operations because personnel is in excess of 63% of our total budget. There's an additional cost in this budget of $1.5 million relative to the 7.5 new positions, the 2.44% increase, the 1% requirement to fund the additional costs for retirement for public employees, as well as the steps that are allowed within the compensation plan. There is additional debt required of us in this plan for prior decisions that we've made of $322,000 and operational expenditures that are identified in the addendum of $509,000. That is $2,331,000. We have a loss of revenue from a couple of line items that accounts for $216,000. Those line items in itself, between personnel, debt, operations, and a loss of revenue equals $2.5 million, which puts us right on par with the 8.51% that's required to fund the budget. Again, all of that information is contained within the transmittal. I'll go ahead and provide that to you now. Certainly available to answer any questions that you may have relative to what you have already seen. And then, of course, we would make ourselves available to review any line item within the budget that you may have any questions to, whether that is the general fund budget or that are any of the special fund budgets. We have that information. We can begin that process this evening. But what we had hoped is that with first reading, this would give you an opportunity to receive that general information. You've had the budgets now over the weekend. There may have been some expenditure that's kind of caught your eye and you want some additional information. We're certainly available to do that this evening as well. But that is the information we have to share with you at this point, and we are available to share as much information as you would like this evening as we continue to move forward. But I defer back to the direction and opinion of council of how you would like for us to proceed in this process.
Council, I think it may be appropriate. I know there's probably questions or comments relative to the budget that we entertain a motion to receive for the purpose of discussion. So I'll offer this for first reading of ordinance number 23-2019. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
And a second. The floor is open for discussion or questions.
Mr. Driggers, I have not had time to scrutinize it as I will. I appreciate this information.
As we would expect.
I think the main thing that caught my eye is the increase in the revenue. I would just like to know where you gain the confidence to boost it like you do. Because under recommended, requested, and then approved, it took a jump there.
Well, Mr. Seifert, if you're joining us at the podium, we want to make sure that we're understanding a little bit different this year under that recommended and approved columns. So we want to make sure that we're explaining that, and we have not had an opportunity to do that collectively. So if you could share that.
Very good, thank you. Starting last year, as you recall, we presented a 2-year budget. And the way the software works is we have 3 columns to work with. We have the requested, recommended, and and approved. And as is typical from our perspective, we bring to you a balanced budget as a proposal. Where we ended last year was a balanced budget in the recommended column. So those numbers were already in the software system. And so these numbers are left from where we were last year, so you could see how we were doing projections last year versus what we did this year. All of the adjustments and requests that we have brought to you tonight are in that approved column by itself. So between the requested and recommended column, that's what we projected 15 months ago, 12, 13, 14, 15 months ago. But then in the approved column, which is balanced tonight, we have taken into account the actual results of June 30th, 18 and year-to-date results that we are receiving right now on the revenue side, in particular to your question, and then re-projected that for next year, and that's where you're seeing some of that growth, is taking into account the actual results that we're experiencing today.
So you're saying that when the actual results are in for this current year, it's going to be obvious that the approved amount's not that big of a jump.
Correct.
Correct. And again, that was why we choose not to use trend analysis any longer, because it over projects for us. And so we're trying very intentionally to be more conservative, because we know that a slowdown in the economy could have great effect to us. So if we were using any of those types of methodologies, we literally would be projecting hundreds of thousands of dollars more The good news in that is that I have every reason to believe that those would be accurate projections as well. But we intentionally project more conservatively because that's how council has asked us to do that. So we step back from that, and we would anticipate that the revenues would be higher than what we are actually budgeting. But that buffer is what allows us, if we should have the economy should slow down some.
Now, I think I've asked this question before, but when we experience, I'm not sure exactly how we calculate the employee bonus at the end of the year, but when we have a windfall of sorts from 26 million or whatever it ends up, is there some kind of a stopping point where we don't take that entire amount, or?
It's capped at 2% of salary.
There you go.
So we already have a cap.
Okay.
And so the fund can't grow any larger than 2% of the salary pool.
Okay.
It's always capped.
Thank you.
Others?
On the revenue side, and this is not really the amount, it's the amount that caught my eye, but under recreational fees, we are going, let's see, from 17-18, and then 2018-19, we're dropping back $7,000. But there hasn't been any, our programs are still full.
Correct.
What's, it's, the scheme of things, it's...
Right. What you're not seeing in that line item is one line item of revenue in particular to the rentals at Kids Planet were moved into the facilities fund and taken out of the general fund.
Okay. Then that's a big chunk for them.
But it's moved into the facilities fund to help maintain that park.
I see.
So instead of us depositing it to general fund, it really restricts it so that we continue to upfit and improve the facility.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. What are, page 5 and 7, I think that's still in revenue. Public safety contracts, 161,000, it's like doubling that.
That line item tracks the hiring of off-duty police officers and firemen to do third-party work for churches, communities, other agencies. And they contract that through the city, and it comes in, and then it flows through us into their payroll.
Okay, and because that's state mandated, the way that has to happen, correct?
It's not state mandated, that is the way we have elected to record it so that we get all this revenues correctly onto the W-2.
Specific to police, it's what's required through our insurance, because particularly for workers' compensation, because they're always on duty, and and so it's a little bit different for them, and our insurance provider requires that we continue to be the employer in that. Now, in some cases, we can recoup that, in some cases we can't. But to that as a line item, it's always a balancer in that if we're short on revenue, then we don't pay as much out on expense. If the revenue's higher, then we had a higher expense. It always zero balances out in the end.
Council, I think it may be appropriate as well, too, while we're on public safety officers, to reiterate that part of our discussion last week in regards to the increase in the insurance was the issue relative to some of the changes that we're seeing around us in terms of pay for public safety officers and the competition for that, and to our public safety officers that are here this evening and to the others that weren't able to attend. Please be assured that this council is cognizant of that. We have had some very, very preliminary conversation in that regard, but I anticipate that we will continue to have some. This is an item that is foremost in our attention. We want to do what is right, but we also want to do that within the system that we have now so that it is fair and equitable, not only to those people that are most affected, but to the other employees as well, too. And so as we move forward, we will have the opportunity to take advantage of not only what we have gathered from other departments, but also a review of our salaries and staffing needs as we go forward. And if we need to make adjustments mid-year or sometime during the year, we will have the opportunity to do that and take a look at that. I think that we always need to be mindful of what other departments are paying, but we also need to be mindful of the fact that we offer a certain level of benefits and benefit to the place that you live and work, and we think that is certainly worth something as well, too. One of the things that I think industry here has quickly learned is that trying to outpay each other is a race to the bottom, and for those folks that will move for 50 cents or $1 an hour, you're only going to have them until they're able to find the next job that'll pay them another 50 cents or $1 an hour, and we hope that we can expect more of our employees. And so while we don't want anybody to suffer in regards to a pay that is appropriate for the job that they hold, we will be mindful of that as we go forward, and you have our word on that. Others? Council, it's a lot to absorb. We get this every year and take a precursory look at it. We get the overview. We've had the opportunity just to spend a little time with it over this past weekend. You have got 2 weeks. I will offer that the administrator and or finance department is available for questions. You can do that in person, on the phone, and email, whatever is best to get you the answer. Some of that possibly will be shared with the entire council when appropriate, but I know that they will be glad to help you in those regards. This obviously is the first reading, and it'll come back before us again for second reading. We will take whatever time is necessary at that second meeting. And if there is something that you feel may require more time and attention than our second meeting will require, I will be glad to consider a special meeting if necessary. So with that, other questions or comments in regards to our first look at ordinance number 23, 2019?
One general question about debt service on our buildings that we're in now. Are we on the declining path or the declining side of that now?
Yeah, it fluctuates. But relative to our existing buildings, of course, we've taken on some additional debt with some new, bonding.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons you're seeing the increase.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, when we...
But that which we already have.
Right, when we structured it, we were going to have a ramp up, and then it was going to, I think, decline and level off.
Sure.
We've hit the peak. It is, trying to remember when it's actually paid off. I think it's 2023. These facilities will be paid off. We've hit the peak. It does fluctuate, but never more than $25,000, $50,000, $6,000. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I think we had a decrease this year of $6,000. It's not big decreases, but we are below the peak now.
David, just as a reminder, on the revenue side, under the interest and other, the 9% of our budget, what primarily falls under that umbrella?
For which area?
It's interest and other.
Are you looking at the pie graph?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, included in that is interest and transfers from other funds coming into the general fund. That's the biggest item in that.
And as far as those pie charts are concerned, is there any piece of the pie that has moved substantially?
If you look at the history of the last 20 years, that pie is pretty consistent.
Pretty consistent.
I showed Riley the pie chart piece for personnel for expenditures, and he said it was, the percentage was too high. But I don't think it's too far off from where we've been the last few years. It's pretty correct. It's always been right around 60%.
The nature of the beast. Others?
It was about 63.2 last year.
First reading of ordinance number 23-2019, the City of Greer budget ordinance for the fiscal year 2019-2020. Any comments in that regard? Questions? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes.